Hello, this is Jonathan. I am a travel expert for Ecuador and Galapagos here in Happy Gringo. I've been doing this for about 8 to almost a decade, so I have a lot of experience, self-experience, and also from hearing feedback from my passengers that I've helped come to my country. Today we're going to discuss how to get to Galapagos. There are a couple of things that should be considered, but overall it's pretty simple. So the idea of this live is for me to go through some of the important things that we would like for you guys to know, and that way you would have a super simple way to get to Ecuador and therefore to Galapagos. So the first thing you need to consider is that you do need to get to Ecuador first. So there are no, well, there are 2 airports in Galapagos. These are domestic airports, so you do need an international flight from your country into Ecuador first. Galapagos Islands is one of the 24 provinces in Ecuador, so you do need to enter Ecuador first, do migration in, once you're coming in, and then it would be pretty much just a domestic flight into the Galapagos Islands. One of the things that you have to consider is that we have 2 international airports that you can get into Ecuador. One is Quito, which is where we are right now, and our office is happening here in Quito, which is the capital of Ecuador, and this is in the Andes. Okay, so the high Sierra part of Ecuador, and then the other airport is located in the coastal area of Ecuador. That's Guayaquil. Those are both international airports. They have about the same amount of flights, international flights coming in, and they do have the same amount of flights going into Galapagos and coming back. So yeah, what you want to do is very important is that you want to make sure that you arrive at the very minimum 1 day before your trip to Galapagos. It is pretty much impossible to fly on the same day that you come into Ecuador, also fly over to the islands. My recommendation always, because there can always be a delay or flight cancellations, especially in the winter time up in North America or in Europe. There can be cancellations due to snow storms or thunderstorms. So try to consider having at least, my recommendation is 2 days. And yes, you can fly into Quito or Guayaquil. Most people do come into Quito, and some others do prefer to go into Guayaquil because there is more direct flights over to Galapagos. But these are the 2 airports that you can come into. To give you an idea, from the US, there are about 6 direct flights. The most common ones are from Miami, Atlanta, and Fort Lauderdale. But you also have some that are coming in from Houston and also from New York. And hopefully they'll open up more destinations that come in directly to Quito. If you are coming from Europe, you do have options to come from Madrid and Amsterdam. Those are the ones that are coming in usually daily. So those are the locations that you would have to come from to get into Ecuador. The second point we want to talk about is which is the second step. It's taking the actual flight from mainland Ecuador, which is either Quito or Guayaquil, and then going to the Galapagos Islands. So pretty much, as I was mentioning, there are about 5 to 6 flights daily from either Quito or Guayaquil into 2 of the airports that are found in Galapagos, which is the Baltra Airport. Sometimes there's a bit of confusion because some people read Seymour Airport, or some even are told that they're going to fly into Santa Cruz. This is pretty much Baltra Airport. That's the actual name, Baltra or Seymour, and this is an island that's found very close to Santa Cruz, so it's like coming into Santa Cruz, which is one of the biggest islands and the most populated, the most common ones. Or you can go to San Cristobal, and that airport is actually inside of the islands of San Cristobal. As I was mentioning, there are 5 to 6 flights approximately each day. And an important thing that you do have to consider is that first, when you are booking your flight, the domestic flight from Quito or Guayaquil into the Galapagos Islands, there's usually sometimes a confusion about rates. You will find that there are super cheap rates many times, and some of them can be last minute deals or something like that, and that's wonderful if you can take advantage of that. But it's very important that you realize that there are pretty much three rates that are considered when flying over to Galapagos. The cheaper rate is always offered to the actual citizens of the Galapagos Islands. They have pretty much this privilege where they have a better rate to fly from mainland Ecuador into Galapagos. The other one is the one for nationals, in this case me and myself as an Ecuadorian resident. You have a special rate to fly from the mainland to Galapagos. And then there is the regular rate, which is pretty much for everybody around the world, which is the one if you're coming from abroad and you don't have an Ecuadorian citizenship, you would have to purchase. So make sure that you're not looking at a super good deal, but you're not paying the taxes that you would, and that would be charged at the moment that you're actually checking in that day before or that same morning. So to make sure that you're actually looking at the rate that applies to people that are coming from abroad. So that's a very important thing to keep in mind. Okay, so about like when do the flights actually leave? I mentioned before that you don't fly. It's not possible to fly the same day that you come in from abroad into Ecuador to Galapagos, because the flights to Galapagos, they operate very early in the morning. So flights leaving between, as early as 6:30, 7 a.m. Departing to 9, 10, maybe 11 a.m. So as you can see, those are very early morning flights. These are usually, the reason for this is because most of the trips in Galapagos, especially cruises, those you need to arrive to the islands around lunchtime. So yeah, the operation of the flights are always in the morning. So that's why it's important that you consider that you are in Ecuador 1 or 2 days if possible before, so you can make your flight on time and get to Galapagos approximately around lunchtime. Something that's important is that you consider that most flights usually start from Quito, and they make a stop in Guayaquil before going to the Galapagos Islands. There are very few direct flights. Most of them work this way, where the flight from Quito to Guayaquil is about 40 to 45 minutes, and then there's a small layover. What very much happens is that people that are in Guayaquil, that arrive to Guayaquil International Airport, that they get on board of the same flight. You wouldn't have to change your seat or anything like that. It's just a small layover. They recharge with more fuel and everything. This layover lasts about 45 to 50 minutes. So between the flight from Quito to Guayaquil, you have about 40 minutes, then about another 45, 50 minutes layover in Guayaquil, and then the actual flight over to San Cristobal or Baltra, which is about an hour and a half. You do have to also consider that when going all the way out west to the Galapagos Islands, they are 1 hour behind. So that is an advantage. So you're technically getting there earlier, and you have more time to enjoy your first day. Another thing that is important to consider is what you would need in order to make it to Galapagos and be able to fly over there. Once you've already purchased your tickets, you would have to do the check-in. In Ecuador, the check-ins are the airlines that fly over there, which are Avianca, LATAM. These are the ones that they only allow about, they say 48 hours. In some cases, you have the chance to do the check-in 48 hours. But usually, that check-in process is opened up about 24 hours before then. There are some operators, especially if you are booking a cruise, for example, with us, in most cases we would also be taking care of that check-in, so you don't have to. Or you also have an assistant in the airport that would help you do that, and also with your luggage. But just to keep in mind, about 24 hours before your flight, you do have to check that you have to make sure that you're checked in. Besides that, very important, when you arrive to the airport, being in Quito or Guayaquil, you do have to have in cash, very important, in cash, $20. Just so you're aware as well, our national currency is the US dollar, so you can take this out on the ATMs that are found in the airport or in the city. There's a lot of ATMs, but yeah, you need to make sure you have $20. When you're in the airport, you make a line where you get your transit control card. That's what we know as the TCT card. It's $20. It's been like that for many years, and that hasn't increased. Just so you know, it's $20 still. So you make this line. Pretty much the TCT card is the control that they have, so that not only do you get your bag screened once you have that, but also so that Galapagos Islands make sure that no foreigners pretty much stay more than what they say they're going to stay. So that is important that you also have with you at the moment that you're going to fly back, because they will ask for the second part of the TCT card that you're purchasing. Should you, by bad luck, lose the TCT card or misplace it, don't worry, because then what you just have to do is purchase another one. So it's no biggie, but yes, you need the TCT card in order to travel there. You also need to make sure that in your luggage, when it gets screened, it's important that you don't. Overall, what you really can't bring there, the most important thing is you can't bring any fruit or anything that has a seed in it, or seeds like sunflower seeds or something like that. It's more to control the vegetation, and everything that grows in Galapagos is a native fruit, native seed. So yes, you can't bring that kind of stuff in, but that's pretty much the most important thing you need to keep in mind when you get your bag screened. Also, these flights, because usually from some of my passengers, there is maybe a confusion sometimes of the actual plane that they're going to have, the plane that they're going to be on to get from Ecuador mainland to the Galapagos Islands. These are commercial flights, so they're like the big flights that you will probably be coming in from abroad into Ecuador. So these are commercial flights or big flights. So yeah, your baggage allowance is pretty much like any international flight. You have the 23 kilograms on the check-in bag. You have your carry-on, which is about 8 kilograms, and of course your personal item. So you need to make sure that you have the same, you have your own weight limit. And once you get to Galapagos, there's one more thing that you do need to keep in mind. Here's where you need to pay, everybody pays the Galapagos National Park entrance fee. The new price starting last month is at $200 per person. It's important that you keep in mind that until to this day, you still need to have this in cash. So overall, you would need the $200 for the National Park entrance. This you pay when you make it to Galapagos. There's a line before you get to your luggage, and then of course you meet your guide or whoever's going to be assisting you in Galapagos, and the $20 that I mentioned earlier. So at the very minimum per person, you need to have $220 in cash, because they're only going to accept cash. Yeah, so that would be the other step, which is these important things to keep in mind. And yeah, about Galapagos, I mentioned this, how to leave Galapagos, I mentioned this a bit earlier, but yes, make sure that your TCT card, the transfer control card you got in Quito or Guayaquil airport, you keep that in your wallet or somewhere safe, handy, so you don't misplace it, and you can use this transfer control card when you're leaving. At the moment that you check in, right before you get to the waiting area to get on your flight, you're going to make a line, and they're going to ask for your transfer control card. This is just to make sure that since this is a national park, the idea is that only the residents of Galapagos are the ones that stay there and work there. So yeah, the idea is to control any kind of migration into the islands, in order to preserve the wildlife over anything. Yes, these would be pretty much the 4 important steps. So now we're gonna, I'm gonna answer some of the most frequently asked questions that we usually get, and hopefully this helps you out if there's any questions at this moment.
Okay, so one of the questions is travel insurance required for a Galapagos trip?
No, travel insurance is not something that is required. At no point that they're gonna ask for this, either when you come into Ecuador or also when you're going to fly to Galapagos. But my recommendation 100% is that you do have one. If you don't have a provider whenever you're making trips, you can always also check with your credit card. In many cases, we have seen clients that they decide to pay for the trip with a credit card because they have that advantage. But yes, the travel insurance, it's very important that you do get that back home. And let them know what kind of trip you will be doing, the dates. If you need any kind of letter or something that they need to know before or after, we can always help with that. But no, travel insurance is recommended only, but it's not mandatory.
Okay, what happens if my flight to the Galapagos is delayed or canceled?
Okay, so about this, I think the most important thing to consider is that you try to make sure first you have to check what kind of trip you're doing. So the most common, one of the most commons is a cruise. When you're booking a cruise, the cruise operator is always usually going to recommend and pretty much try to enforce that when you book your space, on that cruise, you also allow them to book the flight. The reason for this is because you try to make sure that everybody that is going to be on the cruise is on the correct flight. And should there be a delay, they're going to be aware of this. So they will adjust their entire operation to make sure that you still do the experience that you were promised on the first day, or at the very least, still get on board and enjoy the rest of your days. They'll adjust to that. So it's important that you always try to get your tickets with us, which would be through the boat operator, so that in case there's any delay, which could happen, you still are able to do your trip. Especially when it's on a cruise, since it's probably going to leave the pier that same day, you don't miss out on the rest of the trip. If you're going to do a land base, the most important thing to do is, of course, inform us, letting us know that that there's a flight delay. Usually the same airline is always going to give you a waiting time, and then you'll get to Galapagos on the same day, a bit later. And the same thing if it's on the day you're returning back. It's very rarely, like I mentioned, I've been helping passengers out with trips for about almost a decade, and I don't recall there being a complete cancellation where you can't fly out the same day. So it's usually 1 or 2 hours maybe that there's a delay, so you're going to get to either Galapagos or back home on that same day. So yes, just make sure you notify your travel agent, and they will adjust the itinerary.
Okay, can I extend my stay in the Galapagos once I arrive?
Well, while you can do it, usually you have to consider that the Galapagos National Park is aware when you will be entering. It's important information, and also when you will be leaving. There is a possibility to extend it, but it's important that you also consider that it's usually going to require in a fee to change the flights, which that is very important that you make sure that you check availability for the flight for the new dates that you're going to want to come back. If it's 1 or 2 days, there's usually not a fee that's too much, but if it's a bit more, then yeah, it could require higher fees. These are penalties that are charged by the airline.
Okay, what's the easiest way to get around once I arrive at the island? Like, for example, if there's taxis or something like that?
Okay, so once you get there, it's very different when you get to Baltra or when you get into San Cristobal. When you get to Baltra, the process to get from, as I mentioned earlier, Baltra or Seymour is a small little island located north of Santa Cruz. And in Santa Cruz you have Puerto Ayora, which is usually where most people begin their first activities and where they have their first few nights. So if you get into Baltra Airport, you're going to take a Lobito, which is Spanish for sea lion. That's the name of the bus that you would take from Baltra Airport to the pier, where you will cross a canal, and then you get to Santa Cruz. The Lobito, you could purchase the ticket right there. In some tourist cruises, sometimes that is included. You would have to check that if inclusions are not included. But the Lobito is about $5, and that is what it costs to get from there to the pier. Once you're there, you cross on a small type of speedboat that gets you from one side to the other. This doesn't take you more than 5 minutes. 2 minutes is literally just crossing a canal. And once you're there, if you don't have a private transfer, or pretty much a van or a pickup truck that's going to get you from the highland part of Santa Cruz into Puerto Ayora, or wherever your hotel is located, there are taxis there that can help you at that moment. The pricing does vary. There's a lot of negotiation into it if you don't have it previously booked, so that's why we always recommend that you allow us to have all the services done through our trusted drivers. But should you just be there and pretty much backpacking it, you could consider about $30, maybe $35, depending how many people are trying to get on that pickup truck to get from the highlands into Puerto Ayora. And San Cristobal, the advantage is that the actual airport is in the island of San Cristobal, so you can just pretty much grab a taxi and go to wherever you're looking to get to at that moment. So it's pretty simple.
Okay, thank you so much.
Well, bye.